good afternoon, good morning, or good whatever time it is while you're listening to this. And what is this, you may be asking? Well, this is the first ever episode of the 3rd MEB Podcast, recorded here in beautiful, sunny Okinawa, Japan. I'm Corporal Carawan. I'll be your host. Why, you may be asking? Well, my mom said I have face for radio. This podcast is designed to increase our resiliency as individuals, our readiness as a unit, and our relevancy to this region. Our intended audience members are Marines, sailors, and their families. And we want to reach out to them, especially after this difficult time of COVID kind of separating us all into our own homes. And this is the most important time to reach out to each other. So today, for our very first episode of the 3rd MEB Podcast, we have our very esteemed guest, Brigadier General Kyle Ellison. And we'll be spending some time talking about the 3rd MEB. Sir, it's an honor to have you here today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And I think this is our first time, as you had already mentioned, but it's important. And I think that everybody who listens to this should understand the purpose of it. And the purpose is to keep our MEB informed, keep them informed about what our focus areas are, keep our families and our Marines and sailors informed about what we're doing out there and why it's important we're doing it. And I'm really excited. So just up front, our MEB focuses on resiliency, readiness, and relevancy. And so hopefully we can talk a little bit about those three things today. But as we progress, my intent would be with this podcast to really focus on those three lines of effort, for lack of better terms. But I don't want that to constrain us either. I would like this to be open dialogue, and I would love feedback on the backside of this podcast of what our Marines and sailors and our families want to hear, and then we'll attack.
Understood,
so it's great
sir.
to be here.
Understood, sir. And you've been with the 3rd MEB for about a year now. Is that correct, sir?
I have. It's almost a year exactly coming up.
And, sir, you've had an impressive career before this. You've been to Iraq, Afghanistan, and right here I have that you were the Deputy Executive Assistant to the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Is that correct, sir?
I was. Yeah, it was an interesting tour, and I will tell you that my career, if you read my bio, is probably there's many folks that have bios that are much more impressive than that. But my time on the Joint Staff was an incredible learning opportunity for me. And just as we're talking about relevancy with the MEB, we have in our own careers, we have to go to billets in and out of the operating forces that keep us relevant for the future. And I will tell you that the time on the Joint Staff, and just to be clear, the Joint Staff is that link. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who is the principal advisor to the President of the United States on all things military, has a staff too, just like we do. And that Joint Staff is the connecting file for the military, down who executes the operations, and our policymakers and those that develop strategy for our nation. So the Joint Chiefs of Staff gives guidance and advises the President, and the staff makes sure that the chairman is briefed accordingly. And the Commandant, for example, is a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And so all the service chiefs make up the Joint Chiefs of Staff that is led by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Would you say that's your favorite billet, or how do I phrase this? That's your favorite job experience thus far of being in the Marine Corps, sir?
Oh, I wouldn't go that far, brother. I will tell you it was an incredible learning experience, and I did 2 jobs on the Joint Staff, and it's where I needed to be at that point in my career. But my favorite thing to do is to be out with sailors and Marines.
So you're not only the CG of the 3rd MEB, but you're also a family man. Is that correct, sir?
I am a family man. I have 2 children. My daughter is a senior at the United States Naval Academy, and my son just finished his freshman year up at the University of Rochester, up in that upstate New York, where it's cold, right along the Great Lakes there, and he's enjoying his time there. So it's just my wife Dawn and I that are here in Okinawa, and quite honestly, I haven't been here since 2001. And we're really excited to be here in our first year. Although COVID has been an obstacle, we haven't let that get in our way of making sure that we enjoy this wonderful island.
Do you have a favorite activity here in Okinawa, sir?
Well, we like to get out and go on the water. So we have our paddle boards, and And you're getting a little personal here, my friend. But, yeah, we like to get out on the water or the paddle board. And Don and I just got scuba certified. And so we're going to try to, when time allows, go see the beautiful coral and get on the water. And certainly I enjoy my PT time as well.
Understood, sir. So right back into work then, sir.
Okay.
So can you tell us a little bit about your responsibilities as the 3rd MEB CG and what it entails? What is your main focus when you get up in the morning, sir?
It's a good question. I think that I wear 2 hats. I think in the MEF, I'm the Deputy Commanding General for Lieutenant General Clarity, and that has a job jar. And then I'm also the Commanding General for the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Brigade. And so it's a balancing act many times, but each day I probably spend some time on the MEB and some time on the MEF. And from the MEF's perspective, I position myself where the MEF CG needs me to go to ensure that I can enable him to do what he needs to do as the Commanding General. Sometimes that may be involving myself in planning. Other times it may be going to an event or speaking on behalf of the MEF. And sometimes it may be traveling to D.C. or other types of war games to fight the MEF on his behalf, so we learn and make the MEF better and come back and follow through that with our learning when we get back into the MEF. And then the MEB, I'll tell you that the MEB is that fire brigade for the MEF, period. I mean, it is a core headquarters that is an agile C2 node, command and control node for the MEF Commanding General that he can apply anywhere in our area of operations. We could find ourselves in the Philippines. We could, as our history tells us, we could find ourselves in an HADR mission, which is a humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operation on mainland Japan, down in the Philippines, in Nepal, anywhere in our area of operations. We are responsible to the MEF-CG and to Indo-PACOM for being ready. And that takes work. It takes solid planning. And then the individual Marine, it takes a resilient Marine and sailor who is strong mentally, morally, and physically to go do what we're asking them to do at a moment's notice. So that part of it, operationally, is our job as the MEB. And then I am doing as the MEF commander needs me to do in support of the MEF on a daily basis as well.
Understood, sir. Speaking of carrying out the mission, we worked with Japan Ground Self-Defense Forces Amphibious Rep and Deployment Brigade last year during a
Yeah, it was a great experience working with them. And we should take every opportunity to work with our partners. And I know I cut you off. I was just telling you I was excited about it. It was one of the highlights of the last year.
I'm kind of glad you did, because I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Yamasakura,
sure.
So, sir, let me ask
I'm not sure I pronounced it right either, but we're in the box.
Sir, let me ask you, why do you think it's so important to work with allies and partners?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think it's pretty simple, and it's because we're stronger together than we are individually as nations. If you're grounded in a common purpose and common goals, then it creates a stronger message to our adversaries. And we are grounded in common values, in common security objectives, and common interests. And although culturally we're different, it doesn't mean our interests are different. And so we're here and we're partnered with them, and we are hopefully part of their community, both here on island and in mainland Japan. And we have tremendous relationships. And if you turn the map around and look at our relationships from an adversary's perspective, I'm not sure. I think we'd probably say, hey, I'd rather fight 1 versus 2.
You're absolutely right, sir. I completely agree. Can you tell us more about your most rewarding experience in the MEB?
My most rewarding experience in the MEB. I will. Yeah, I'm not gonna hang my hat on one event. I'm just not. I will tell you that We're doing a lot of great things in the MEB, and we've worked really hard and over the last year to really understand what our role is and where our boss needs us to be ready to go. We've set foundations. We've planned hard. We've worked with allies and partners. We've worked with our joint partners. And what I'm most proud of is what we've accomplished over the last year. So there's not one day where I come into work and say, hey, yesterday was the best day of my time here at 3rd Marine Expeditionary Brigade. I will tell you that there's not a day that goes by that I'm not happy coming to the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Brigade every day to work. And it's because of the work ethic, it's because of the energy and the enthusiasm and the understanding of what our mission set is and what it takes to be good at it is why I like coming to work every day. And we will continue to get better. In this next year, what we need to do is we need to transition a little bit to make sure that we have Marines and sailors that are totally fit in mind, body, and spirit to take the fitness app and talk about it a little bit. And I believe in that. I believe that you're only as good on the battlefield as you're good in your heart and your soul. And we're going to work on that more, and that's one part of why I'm excited to be here this afternoon with you, because this is part of it.
Yes, sir. And you talked about transitioning the next year. We're starting to slowly transition out of the effects of COVID. We're trying to get back to normal as much as normal can be after a pandemic, sir. So what is your goals for the MEB over the next few months to a year, following this pandemic, sir?
Yeah, well, I didn't like to look at the pandemic as anything but an obstacle, and you can do two things with obstacles. You can bypass them or reduce them.
Sir.
Right, and I think that it requires discipline, just as we do pre-combat checks and inspections before we go out on patrol. We had a responsibility as individuals within the MEF and the MEB to protect ourselves, our families, and our community. And arguably, where we are today in COVID, I would tell you is partly because we had a disciplined force. There were some obstacles along the way that we dealt with when they came our way, and we overcame them. And so I'm not gonna let the last year at all, as I haven't all year, and as General Clarity hasn't all year, stop us from doing what we're supposed to do. It didn't, and I'm not going to let it as we move forward. But it does open opportunities, certainly, to do more things. And so as we get opportunities to pick up the MEB and to deploy them for exercises and to deploy them for training and rehearsals, we're going to do it. And it'll be a lot easier as we have more people vaccinated, which allows us to take care of our partners when we go into their country, for example. And then I will be less concerned about our individual Marines from a force preservation perspective if we've taken care of ourselves and we're protected. So I'm looking for opportunities to get up and go, and to train and be able to look General Clarity in the eye and our partners in the eye and the joint force in the eye and saying, if you asked us to go, we're ready to go now.
Understood, sir. And what would you say to the Marines of the MEB as we're gearing up to take on these new missions, to tackle these new obstacles, sir?
Well, I think it's clear that, number one, we're only as good as we've trained to be. And I think that this next year is pretty simple for me, is to be ready. If I had the whole MEB in front of me as I did this morning and I was talking to them, my guidance is clear that it's not a bumper sticker that we're the MEF's Fire Brigade. We got to live it, mind, body, and spirit, and that means we got to work hard to be able to say we can do it. And that's part about keeping the faith, too, with our Marine sailors and their families. Nobody wants to deploy not ready. No one wants to go and deal with an adversary and say, I wish I would have trained to that. That's not acceptable, and it shouldn't be the way we are as Marines. And I never want to look at a family member in the eye and say, your loved one didn't come home because they weren't trained. Now, we don't get a vote when we're fighting an adversary, right? But we do get a vote on how we're trained and how much we're ready to go into conflict if that happened. Now, on the other side of it also is that we need to be compassionate. This is not only about locating, closing with, and destroying an adversary. That's part of it sometimes if we had to. But this is about what we do on a daily basis, being ready to go help those who are in need. And that's where this idea of compassion comes into play. So I will tell you that we can be compassionate warfighters. We can be good at closing with the enemy and accomplishing our mission, but we also can be a caring organization and move to those that are in need and help them. That's what we've been doing throughout our whole history in the United States Marine Corps. We take those that need to be dealt with harshly, and we deal with them, and then we help those that need to be helped. And I think that's where we need to be, and that's the message I'll continue to give. But it's too late when you're there. We need to be ready before we go.
So I want to discuss the 3 lines of effort for the MEB, which are resiliency, readiness, and relevancy. So, sir, can you tell us a little bit about those and why they're so important to the 3rd MEB?
Yeah, well, the resiliency one is easy. Yeah. We've I've been in the Marine Corps for 28 years now, and I've been to combat 4 times, and I've seen things that I never want to see again. But I recognize the nature of war. At times I've become one with the nature of war. And we are responsible for, as leaders and as Marines, soldiers and sailors and airmen and Coast Guardsmen, responsible to our nation for going in harm's way and being able to thrive in uncertain and adverse environments. And it's not only about during. I would argue that during crisis, and it could be an HADR too, the things you see when you're doing humanitarian assistance and disaster relief takes its toll on your mind and your soul and in your heart in many ways. And so being resilient is about not being resistant to the hard times and not being resistant to what you see, but being able to understand it, recognize the challenges, and operate through it. And that's daily life too, right? That's we encounter plenty of adversity in our day-to-day lives. Part of being resilient is being able to stand in and make a stand where you need to make a stand on challenges and problems, and then win, right? And that's not just during, it's before, during, and after. As leaders, we're responsible for the mental well-being of everyone we lead, from the time you roger up to be their leader to the time you're no longer with us. And I believe in that. And so resiliency is incredibly important to our ability to actually accomplish missions the missions that we're asked to do. But it's also incredibly important to us as human beings and how we live our lives. And part of being a Marine is not necessarily what you do when you're a Marine, it's what you do after you're a Marine. This isn't just about here and now. This is about for the rest of your life. And I believe it. I don't have any bumper stickers. I don't have notes in front of me. I'm just talking to your brother. But I'm telling you that, if you were done today and you didn't re-enlist, I'd be pretty happy when I saw you 20 years from now and you told me I'd just been a great citizen. That's resiliency too. That's who we are, right? And so that's not easy, right? It takes work. And so I think the intangibles of our business are the most important and the hardest for us to tackle, and that's resiliency. And it's a main effort of mine because we're in a people's business, and so we're going to focus on it. So in this podcast, for example, I would love to have some guest speakers that talk about their experiences. We have this great reboot program that has been part of the MEB for a while now, and just tremendous stories about resiliency, but more importantly, the work it took to be resilient. And so that's the first one. I think the second one is readiness.
Yes, sir.
And that goes back to some of the things we already talked about.
Yes, sir. It does.
Yep.
It does.
We gotta be ready to get in the fight, thrive in it, and then get ready to do it again.
Yes, sir.
And that's what readiness is all about. And it's having your bags packed, right? So when they say 12 hours isn't a bumper sticker. It means get out the door in 12 hours. And it means you wake up every day ready. Everything from, your reds and powers of attorney to your bags and your rucksack packed with all the gear that you need to have to go out the door quickly. So readiness takes many different forms, but in the simplest terms, it's being able to get out the door after being assigned a mission, accomplish it, come back, get your gear ready again, and be in a 3-point stance when our nation needs us. And that's readiness to me, and we'll work on it. The last one has to do with relevancy. The MEB, for those who have not heard this, is the MEB is not an organization that is present in Force Design 2030. In other words, that it's not necessarily going to be around in the future. But we believe, and I know Lieutenant General Clarity believes, that if you didn't have it, you'd have to build it in times of crisis. And so I don't want to build it in times of crisis. I want to build it to be strong now. And if you build it to be strong now, then you are a more effective force when our country needs us, because you're cohesive. You've trained to a standard. You know each other, and you care about those on your left and right. And we believe in that. So part of this is remaining relevant. Our nation, our Marine Corps needs to see that we're worth the structure, we're worth the money, we're worth the organization as a Marine Expeditionary Brigade. And so I'm driving to it. And it's not me, it's you all are relevant, and it's relevant through your actions. Actions speak louder than words most of the time. I think you've heard that. So the MEB, quite frankly, has been acting since its founding in the early 1917s. So we're going to continue to do that and demonstrate relevancy to our institution. So the 3 R's, resiliency, readiness, and relevancy,
yes, sir,
are our 3 lines of effort. So we're going to keep attacking.
Yes, sir. Would you say that since we're essentially the MEB's fire brigade, correct me if I'm wrong, is that readiness is probably our most pertinent line of effort right now?
It's a great question, and I'm going to come back to you and say no. And I'm going to come back to say that not one line of effort is more important than the others. Everything we do in our business is about a combined arms approach, from leadership to messaging to training to fires on the enemy. It's everything you can bring to bear to put the enemy in a dilemma. And so we're going to bring to bear everything, all 3 lines of effort, to put our adversaries in a dilemma and to make our MEB more ready. And so the 3 R's there that I communicated earlier, we don't look at them in a vacuum. All right? Each one of them is important, and each one of them has a role in that combined arms effect to making us better.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But, sir, you mentioned a little bit of MEB's history beforehand, and we're running out of time. Before we close out, sir, I was hoping if you could share with us maybe a piece of your favorite MEB history.
Yeah, well, I think if you walked in my office and at the MEF headquarters, I don't have MEF pictures in my office. I have an office up at the MEF headquarters. I don't know if you know that, right up with the CG. And our CP for the MEB is our command post for the MEB is down the road from the MEF CP. So I spent a lot of time going back and forth. But in my office, I don't have MEF pictures. I have Marine Expeditionary Brigade pictures. And some of my favorite parts of those pictures in the office are the linkages with different units that fought or performed missions underneath the headquarters of the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Brigade. So you go back to Cuba and you go to Vietnam and Operation Starlight and those types of operations where the That's sometimes a 3rd Provisional Expeditionary Brigade, and other times a 3rd Amphibious Brigade, and other times a 3rd Marine Expeditionary Brigade. There's always a link to units that I've served in. 7th Marines in Operation Starlight, 6th Marines in Cuba, and then the history of men like Smedley Butler and Lewis Chesty Polar, commanded the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Brigade. And so, this organization is a storied one. It's part of our Marine Corps legacy, and perhaps we can focus on some of those operations or some of that legacy in one of your podcasts or several podcasts in the future. But we should bore down into some of the history of the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Brigade so you can learn that you're part of something special. That, too, is about never forgetting who we are and where we came from, and about being relevant, is believing in the unit that you're fighting with and the Marines and sailors you're fighting alongside. So I'm not going to let you off the hook. I expect some history, too, involved in this.
Absolutely, sir. I'm already starting to read up as I recently have checked in the unit myself, sir, and it's been MEB has a wild history comparatively to the other units I've been in, sir. It's an honor to really be in the MEB, sir. It's
hard, right? Because we have that core headquarters element, but then our combat power, or the forces that come to us to do what we're being asked to do, come from all over the Marine Corps, and in many ways come from the joint community. And that's another aspect of our mission set that a lot of people don't know, that we have joint requirements in support of certain O plans and operational plans for those that aren't familiar. And certainly from an HADR, humanitarian assistance perspective, we are the forward joint task force for general clarity. And we go forward and we bring in all these joint capabilities, people and things, and we apply it, and we turn scarlet and gold into purple for joint when we're fighting as a joint force. So we shouldn't forget that. So we bring that to the table as well for our MEF, and it's our MEB and our MEF, and we need to be resilient, ready, and relevant.
Well, thank you so much for your time today here. It's been a real honor and a pleasure, and I'm sure our listeners will appreciate what you've had to share, and as I hope they're as motivated as I am currently right now, sir.
Yeah, well, listen, it is a pleasure to be here, and but this is only as good as you want it to be and as the MEB team wants it to be. And we'll invest in it because it is about you and our families. And I'm happy to allow you all to run it, and happy to set conditions that enable everybody to have a say in what we talk about here. If it's important to one person, it's important to all of us. And so my request is that as you listen to this and you want to hear about a certain topic, or you want this to go a certain direction, I'm all in.
Understood. Sir.
So this has been rewarding for me too, and I appreciate it. And Semper Fidelis.
Semper Fidelis, sir. Again, I'm Corporal Carawan, and thank you for tuning in to the first ever episode of the 3rd MEB Podcast. Remember to stay resilient, ready, and relevant, because as we all know, we could get that call anytime. And will you be ready when you get it? Have a great day.